Australia, continent of contrasts, where kangaroos hop and koalas bear a friendly greeting for tourists the world over. Sydney, Australia, no relation to Eugene, Oregon. City of contrasts, where courageous British explorers dumped convicts of contrast upon the sandy beaches of Australia, world's largest penal colony.
Grumble, grumble, grumble.
You, Kafka, over there.
Psst, we're gonna make a break for it tonight. Midnight, pass it on.
We can't escape. Don't you realize we're on?
A continental commonwealth where the Indian Ocean meets the Pacific. Today, the sons and daughters of those convicts have created a modern industrialized nation down under. But many mysteries remain unsolved. How do Australians stand upside down all the time without getting headaches? And are wallabies related to killer bees? Although Aussie patriots were unsuccessful in their attempt to make A.B. Banjo Patterson's Waltzing Matilda the national anthem, Australian music has always reflected the mood of a nation of surfers and tennis pros on the go.
There's an old Australian stockman lying, dying. And he gets himself up onto one elbow and he turns to his mates who are gathered round and he says,
"Tie me kangaroo down, sport. Tie me kangaroo down. Tie me kangaroo down, sport. Tie me kangaroo down."
Adelaide, city of contrasts, birthplace of the first group of Australians to become international superstars while remaining in their native land. Here we discovered a highly trained team of crack radio professionals feverishly readying a documentary about that group. I spoke with their leader. Your name, sir?
I'm Robert W. Morgan.
Could you tell us a little about the award-winning radio documentary you're producing here?
Glad to. This week on the Special of the Week, we down another Diamantina cocktail and raise our glasses high to 6 musicians who brought the music of the new Australia to the world as we go reminiscing with the Little River Band.
When you've got people that are going out and doing things, it gives you a bigger ego, I think. It's a lot easier to say, I'm Australian, when you can be proud of things that you've done that are very successful. It really helps. 10 years ago, maybe we didn't have that sort of acclaim. Maybe our athletes weren't doing as well and we didn't have our Rose Walls and our Newcombs. And now even as far as music goes, and, and our Olivia Newton-Johns and whatever, it does help, it really does.
Suddenly, the world's aware of Australia, especially her singers, such as Helen Reddy, Olivia Newton-John, and the 4 Gibbs, Barry, Morris, Robin, and Andy, who were raised, if not born, in Australia. But while they all moved on to greener pastures the moment opportunity knocked, the Little River Band keeps right on flowing along in Australia. In fact, even their album covers cover their country's cultural heritage. Little River Band guitarist Bede Birtles, that's his real name, by the way, and drummer Derek Polici explain why.
We really wanted to let people know in a subtle way where the band was from, you see, without doing what Qantas did, like the blatant kangaroo and koala things on the album covers, and that's the reason why we probably reverted back to Australia's past, which is quite an interesting past,
Patriotism is not one of our stronger traits in Australia, and it's good that, we're doing our bit, I think.
While the Little River Band's musical style of rich vocal harmonies, blended with impeccable instrumental arrangements, are universal in their appeal, their album titles aren't. Take Diamantina Cocktail, for instance. While I already knew it was a drink popular during the turn of the century in the Diamantina area of Queensland, I had no idea what went into one. Fortunately, lead vocalist Glenn Shorrock does.
It's a rum-based alcoholic milkshake. It's got condensed milk, rum, and an emu egg, which is like an ostrich bird with a big egg like this. It's very hard to get eggs out of them. You've got to run very fast, and there's lots of dust and feathers.
It's very messy.
Well, squawk, squawk, and then you crack the egg into the thing and drink it. It's very, very rich and not very nice, but we like the name. Yeah. Not the drink, we like the name.
Now that riddle's solved, what in the world, or in Australia, is a sleeper catcher?
Number 4, black.
The sleeper catcher is involved with a game where you're tossing coins, and if it lands on 2 heads or 2 tails, you can bet against someone across the room, and lots of people drop money on the floor. All the money is thrown into the centre of this gambling ring, and the sleeper catcher is a guy who sort of surreptitiously sneaks around and picks up money that people may leave on the floor, uncovered bets.
Because they're the only international recording stars who've remained in Australia, and because they've patriotically popularized obscure moments in their homeland's history, you'd think George McArdle, Bea Birtles, Glenn Shorrock, Derek Pellicci, David Briggs, and Graham Goebel would be Australia's 6 most respected men. According to Glenn, not only did the Little River Men have to make it abroad before being taken seriously back home, but once they did, they were put down under.
We've got the other thing that happens unique to Australia. As soon as you become famous, there's some backlash that happens. There's some negative reaction from your audience because you've got to that lofty heights. They tend to resent it for some reason or other. If you want to get deep into it, I mean, it could be the actual origins of the country in the first place, because it came from convicts, and it was pretty... There's a joke that Australia is the most balanced nation in the world because there's a chip on each shoulder.
I'm Robert W. Morgan on the Special of the Week with the Little River Band.
Nominate your mum in the Super Mum competition. Call 654-3344 anytime between 9 and 5 on DB Music.
21 to 9, I don't have a mum, but I'll be nominating my brother-in-law, Colin. It's Rick Melbourne from DB Music.
Melbourne, Australia, city of contrasts, where Rick Melbourne, disc jockey of contrasts, wakes up his countrymen every morning on Radio 3DB. The members of the Little River Band have been involved in Australia's music since the mid-'60s, and so's Rick Melbourne.
You go through the history, it's incredible, because, way back to 1964, they were part of a group called the Twilights. Glenn Shorrock was, and then the Twilights broke off, and Glenn Shorrock, I think, went with Brian Cadd. I don't know what Brian's doing now. Let me see, what happened then? They went out and they formed a group called Axiom. But out of this, slowly, the evolution of their sound happened, right up to today with Little River Band.
The musical streams flowing into the Little River Band include such groups as the Twilights, Axiom, Mississippi, and Esperanto, and such musicians as Rick Springfield, Terry Britton, Brian Cadd, and Chris Stockley. Bea Birtles puts it all in perspective.
I was in a band called Zoot. We were 4 really sort of good-looking guys, it was like a team thing. Rick Springfield was the lead guitarist in the band. We used to also record songs written by a guy called Terry Britton, who's just recently wrote Devil Woman for Cliff Richard, And he was the lead guitarist in the Twilights, which was Glenn's band, you see. You see, the thing you got to understand that at home, the pop scene is so small that it's incestuous, for example, I'll tell you, the bass player with Bebop Deluxe used to be the bass player in Mississippi. This can go on and on and on, like Glenn with the Twilights and Brian Cadd with Axiom, and before that,
Stockley, the Dingoes, yada yada yada.
It just goes on and on. It's like a big family tree.
Glenn Shorrock's band, Axiom, was Australia's first supergroup. However, another Australian axiom is that as soon as a group becomes successful there, they'll catch the first plane bound for England, and they hope stardom.
We got hungry and went to England again and blew the band apart after about 9 months. And they all went back to Australia, and I stayed on, became Esperanto. I just did whatever I could. It forced me into writing songs. That was the positive thing I got out of that band. And from being in England, it forced me to become a songwriter and believe that I could write songs. Because up until then, I always relied on someone else to do it. Well, I want to write songs that mean something to me as well as other people.
Meanwhile, back on the other side of the world, another band was forming. This one with the fine old Australian name of Mississippi. Musically, Mississippi's the source of the Little River Band. Its tributaries include Graham Goebel, Derek Polici, and Bebe Birtles, who says that as soon as Mississippi recorded their first hit, the far from prophetic Kings of the World, they too headed straight for England.
Yeah, it was a weird thing. I mean, we travelled to England, and I think within a space of about 6 weeks, the band broke up, as most bands do. I mean, Glenn travelled to England twice with different bands, or 3 times, and they both broke up as well over there, you know. We met Glenn over there, who, at the time that we rang him up, he just had England as well, you know. When I rang him up, I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, you know, "I've been hitting my head against a brick wall over here, I'm going home." And it just all fell together, you know, because on our past reputation, not only could we make better money at home, but also we could land ourselves a much, much better record deal.
There was nothing muddy about Mississippi's thinking. Like the proverbial boomerang, they returned to Australia a new band, with new members and a new name, the Little River Band. Now all they needed was a hit record, and thanks to Graham Goebel, they got one.
Graham lived quite a sheltered sort of life, like he lived with his parents until the age of 25, whereas ourselves, we probably moved out from home at quite an early age. You know?
Yeah, 12.
And
I got a road map packed in my lunchbox.
he had a job with the government, and it was like, he was pretty much a day-to-day sort of person, you know, 9 to 5. And to become a musician and throw his day gig away and to do the sort of thing that he did must have been quite a big move for him, you know. And I think for that reason he probably wrote It's a Long Way There. Like, he could see what was ahead of him, but he also knew that it would take him a while to get where he wanted to get to.
The Little River Band makes their way upstream. Next on the Special of the Week. I'm Robert W. Morgan. I'm Robert W. Morgan. This week on the Special of the Week, Australia's latest gift to the world, the Little River Band. While other artists such as the Bee Gees, Olivia Newton-John, and Helen Reddy have gotten out from down under, the Little River Band has remained true to their homeland. Their album covers recapture Australia's glorious past, with references to Diamantina cocktails and sleeper catchers, while their records reflect music's future, with songs like Lady and Happy Anniversary. Reminiscing with the Little River Band, this week on the Special of the Week. I'm Robert W. Morgan with the Little River Band on the Special of the Week. Listening to a Little River Band album, you sometimes wonder if the same group's playing on each cut. That's because their music ranges from the 40s and nostalgic big bands to the 70s and progressive rock and roll. That can get confusing, but it helps keep the Little River Band creatively awake.
It exists because there's so many writers in the band.
Yeah, also the band exists because of that variety, really. That's one of the reasons why we got the thing together in the first place. We had 3 writers that could write in different styles, and that was attractive to me in the first place.
Everybody's influences separately make up Little River Band collectively, you know?
Yeah, just purely through the arrangement of the song, because it's the 6 guys throwing in their ideas, and so you get those 6 similar ideas in every song, which is that continuum.
There's a style, but the style is I wouldn't call it distinctive.
No.
Some people call our harmonies distinctive, but we just sing harmony, and a lot of other bands do it as well as we do as well, you know. So our style is not really original, but there is a style that it fits into a category, I guess, of Californian music, Western music, country and Eastern. We've had the best to learn from. We had the best of the English stuff, and we've had the best of Americans pumped into us from word go.
The thing about being an Australian musician is that you don't have the superstar musicians to be exposed to that you have in the US. For the last 10 years that I've been a musician, I've sort of tried to constantly be aware of what is happening overseas, you know, so that I can have my finger on the pulse internationally, and so that I can continue to learn and progress rather than just remaining within
Big fish
Australia,
in a small pond.
Looking at Australia as being the total concept, and that's where it's at, you know.
Despite their Australian isolation, the Little River Men have no intention of getting out from down under. In fact, when their patriotism was questioned for calling themselves Mississippi, the boys acted immediately. After all, they weren't about to let anybody stick them up a lazy river without a battle.
We were criticised for being an Australian band with an American name, you see. We decided to change it. And Little River is actually a place which is about 30 kilometres from Melbourne. I think Glenn and I were in the back of a car on the way to one of our gigs, and Glenn said to me, it was sort of Little Riverside, and he said, oh, good name for a song, you know. And within the next breath, he said Little River Band, because it just sort of rolled off the tongue, you know.
Yeah, we got off of a freeway sign, you know, Little River exit. We often laugh and think that if we got a few hundred yards further, we could have been called Wrong Way, Go Back.
The Little River Band floods America with music. Next on the Special of the Week. I'm Robert W. Morgan. I'm Robert W. Morgan on the Special of the Week with the Little River Band. America, land of contrasts. But America's also a land of plenty, where 51% of the world's records are sold. Naturally, the Little River Band wanted a slice of that rich American pie for themselves, so they've toured the United States as often as possible.
I love America. I've always been in awe of America. And when I first came in '76, it just blew me away. It's the most friendly place, you know, as well as being stimulating from all sorts of different angles. But there's one negative thing about Americans that annoys me, is that they're very insular as far as they think that America's the centre of the world and half the world, you know. A lot of people don't even know where Australia is. They don't even know what hemisphere it's in.
There's a classic thing the other day. This lady, old lady, very well-spoken, must have obviously had money, said to Graham, oh, you're Australian, are you? And what language do you speak down there? We find that being on the road, or once we're on the road, food becomes a very important thing to us. You know, you seem to look forward to a really good meal at least once a day, but it doesn't really happen once a day. It happens more like 2 or 3 times a week, you know.
I know, and you start to look for different things in your room. You know, oh, that lampshade's better. You know, I've got a separate bathroom, or you know, I've got a king size bed instead of 2 twins.
It's almost impossible to exaggerate how far away Australia is from America. It's 18 time zones ahead of Los Angeles, for example, and 18 hours away by air. A round-trip ticket can cost as much as $2,400. So when you're an Australian rock group touring America, you'd better be serious. And once you've crossed the Pacific, staying in touch with your family can also be expensive. A simple phone call costs $9, and that's only for 3 minutes.
The highlight now is getting back to LA, you know, because it's really a home away from home. Because in this environment, you can get in and everyone stocks up, puts things in the fridge, and you can go down.
And you can open your case.
The supermarket.
Get everything out of your case. And that should have seen the stuff that ran out of my case. Little creatures with their hands over their eyes. I can't see it. They're in the dark for so long.
I think what we're talking about here is that it's that closeness to home, you know. Anything that closely resembles the security of what you've got at home.
Being reminded of home while on the road is one form of security. Another is turning on a radio in a foreign country on the other side of the world and hearing a song you've written. David Briggs and Bea Birtle shared that experience with a song they composed together.
Well, all I had was like Happy Anniversary, Baby, Got You on My Mind, and 2 chords to go with it. And it was probably the first song that I've written lyrically where it hasn't pertained to something that's actually happened to me, or, you know, I can relate to it. It's purely a fantasy story, and I thought I'd write this song about, you know, this guy who's without his chick, but it's their anniversary, that sort of thing.
I'm Robert W. Morgan. I'm Robert W. Morgan with the Little River Band on the Special of the Week. From laying their beat around the bush in the Australian outback to filling huge arenas in America, the Little River Band's career's been no Aboriginal amateur hour. Instead, it's been marked by professionalism. Glenn Shorrock, you'll recall, is a manager turned musician. On the other hand, their manager, Glenn Wheatley, is a former musician, one who can still appreciate a good prank on the road.
Glenn Shorrock really is the prankster. When he's out on the road, he really enjoys the road. He makes the most of it. Especially him and Derek together are just crazy. I mean, you know, Derek is the fall guy, and Derek and Glenn have got this routine together that's very funny. It's very often that you'll walk onto the plane and here's Derek and Glenn sitting down there with the pillow slips from the little pillows that you have on the plane pulled over their heads with hats on and glasses, and they're sitting here flipping through magazines, reading the magazines as the people are filing past and getting onto the plane. I mean, it's just a riot. You can't believe.
4 of Little River Band's 6 members write. And with that many composers, the band has more tunes than grooves available each time they record a new album. And just how do they decide whose tune will make it onto vinyl?
We have a democratic vote.
They fight.
Yeah. They hand out the boxing gloves and the last one left standing. No, we have a point system for the songs, and you might figure, well, this song's a 6 out of 10, and I reckon that song's a 2 out of 10, and that song's a minus 2 out of 10, you know, so...
Occasionally it might have to boil down to that, you know, where it's A against B and someone else has to decide what it's going to be.
The band is basically a singer-songwriter band, I think. I mean, we don't consider we're the best players in the world. We're just a group of musicians who write songs and sing them, and that's the whole basis.
You work well as a unit, yeah.
Yeah, you know, our strength is 6 people individually doing their thing that makes up the total one unity, you know.
Little River Band. Band of contrasts. They slip from rock and roll into mellow ballads as easily as a disc jockey slips another one of their records on a turntable. They're boldly honest about Australia's shortcomings, but they also fiercely love their homeland and have no desire to live elsewhere. They deal in fantasy and reality, harmony and variety. The Little River Band. They have no intention of ever drying up.
None of us has gone past 2 albums before.
That's right.
Before the band breaking up. And it's a great achievement now to have 4 albums under your belt, and it looks like we're going to do 6 or even 10 albums. And that'd be nice, you know, to look back on and say, well, that's a part of my life that was very successful for me and will stay with you for a long time. Whereas I think the first LRB stuff you could listen to in 10 years' time and still get a reasonable amount of satisfaction from it. When everybody's going in the 1990s and 2001 to go and see a tape recorder on stage and listen to that, beautifully lit. And a man in a white coat and little gloves comes on and goes, click, and we all sit back and go, isn't that nice?
The special of the week on the Little River Band was written and produced by Alan Daniel Goldblatt. Associate producer Jerry Hyman. Our director and travelogue narrator was Lee Hansen. Our engineer, Stu Jacobs. The special of the week is produced and distributed by Watermark Incorporated. Executive producer Tom Rounds. I'm Robert W. Morgan. Thanks for listening.